Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari and today we are doing my top 10 books of 2020. Should I have ended on a good note and done like the top 10 last? Maybe, but we're gonna do top 10 first. Then tomorrow we are doing the worst 10 books of 2020, and then the final day of the 12 days after Christmas, I am going to do the 10 biggest surprises of books for 2020. So, top 10, day 9. Yeah, I can count. It's cool. All of these are 5-star books for me, but they are not all of my 5-star books. I did have more than 10 5-star books. This list does not include rereads. There were quite a few books that I had reread in 2020 that I did give 5 stars, and that would probably be higher on this list if this was like an all-time favorite type of list. But these are books, we're not counting those. These are just books that I read for the very first time in 2020 and that I really enjoyed. Coming in at number 10 is All Systems Red by Martha Wells, and this is book 1 in the Murderbot Diaries. This is a novella about a android, like a part human, part robot, but the human part of this android is lab grown. This is not a person, and Murderbot wants you to know that they are not a fucking human being and that they hate you and they hate all humans. All Murderbot wants to do is watch soap operas. That's it. Lay around, watch soap operas. Instead, they are a security unit, and they are tasked with protecting human scientists who are going to do stupid things, and then Murderbot has to save them because that's what Murderbot is programmed to do. This really just covers Murderbot working with scientists, human scientists, on a planet that they're kind of exploring and the shit that goes down. I'm not really going to get into this because it is a novella. It's very, very short, and like anything I really say is going to spoil the story. This is one of those books that you have to like Murderbot's personality to like. So if you go into this and you think Murderbot is like a stuck-up bitch, then you're not gonna like the book. Like, this is a character-driven story, and Murderbot's snarky personality is what I just adored about this. This is not the only book that you are going to see on this list that I enjoy strictly for the character's personality. The protagonist's personality means a lot to me in my overall enjoyment of reading books. Next up at number 9 is Legend by David Gemmell. This one, I bet you didn't expect to be on here. I didn't expect to like this going into it. This is just sounds like a super generic, fantasy book, medieval fantasy book. Like, everything about this book sounds generic. I'm going to read the back cover, or like the first paragraph on the back cover for you to tell you how freaking generic this sounds. Druss, captain of the axe, was the stuff of legends. Tales of the mighty warrior were told throughout the land, but even as the stories grew in the telling, Druss himself grew older. He turned his back on glory to retreat to a mountain lair, high in a lonely country. There the grizzled old warrior kept company with snow leopards. There he awaited his old enemy, death. This is a book about an old man who used to be a hero. He's a legend, but he didn't die like a lot of heroes do in their stories. He's like 67, I think he's in his 70s in this book, and he is coming back one last time to win a hopeless battle. David Gemmell I like his writing style because he's not afraid to kill off characters. He's like Martin, like George R. R. Martin in that aspect, where he will just murder people that you were like straight up in love with. He's not pulling any punches here. And I like that. I liked how angry Dress was. I liked the side characters. I liked the story of being a helpless story, or like an overwhelming odd story, an underdog story that isn't just magically easily won. I definitely want to read more in this series and see if they live up to this one, but if you like fantasy and you like that hard-hitting, anybody could die at any moment type stories, then you'll like this one. He doesn't do a lot of sex like George R. R. Martin does, so if you're looking for like a lot of sex scenes, this is not for you. But I have books on this list that might be for you. Next up at number 8 is The Only Plane in the Sky by, I don't remember, Garrett M. Graff. This was probably the saddest book that I've read in my entire life. It is exactly what it says. It is an oral history of the 9/11 attacks, like September 11th, 2001 attacks that happened across America. Most people know it for the attacks on the Twin Towers in New York, but it happened at the Pentagon too, and then there was another plane that crashed into a field. So this covers all of them. And how it's told is Garrett Graff like interviewed hundreds, thousands of people who had some sort of experience with or attachment to the events, whether they were people who were actually in the towers, people in the Pentagon, people who spoke with the people who died on the airplanes, just general, like just anybody who had any like direct attachment to this. And he interviewed all of them and then told their stories like moment by moment, where you would have like the moment the first plane hit the building, and then you have stories of the people who escaped the towers, saying like, this is where I was, this is what happened. And then it's just like a couple of sentences for each person over and over and over again. It was very like, it was sad, it was moving, it was told in a way where it's just so many different perspectives and so many things like you wouldn't have ever thought about. I want to say I loved it, but it's not something you love. It's something that it's just like, this is powerful, because it was fucking depressing. Like, I really, like, page 1 I started crying. I ended up getting like, making myself sick because I got so dehydrated from crying so much while reading that book. But if you can handle how sad that book is, it's so well done and so moving that I would recommend anybody who likes reading nonfiction to read that. Next up at number 7 is House of Mirth by Edith Wharton, or The House of Mirth, whatever. This is a classic. This was written in the early 20th century, and it is the story of a socialite in New York who was born privileged into a wealthy family who has no money left. And she basically spends her entire adult life saying that she wants the finer things in life. She wants to be wealthy, so she is going to marry a rich man. She is not here for love. She just wants to marry a rich man. And she courts these men, kind of convinces them to propose to her, and then at the 11th hour she like fucks up the, like she does something that just like ruins the relationship and makes the man like not interested in her anymore. And she's always talking about like how she's so clumsy, she's so stupid, she accidentally ruins all these relationships, and she's never going to be happy because she can't like marry the rich man that she's trying to do. She screws everything up, when you can tell that really she like is doing this on purpose. So like subconsciously, but on purpose. And she's in love with a lawyer named Lawrence Selden. I forgot his name. Her name is Lily, by the way. But she's in love with a lawyer named Lawrence, who's like one of her best friends, and she goes to him a lot for like comfort, to talk about like the relationships that she's fucked up. But he's not wealthy, so she keeps setting aside her love for him in her quest to marry the wealthy man that she said she wants to marry. While this is going on for years and years and years, she's getting more and more destitute and having to live in cheaper and cheaper accommodations. And it's just like this constant, like, depressing story of her life going downhill and how she can't, like, be happy because she can't to admit herself what she really wants. She's like got this like societal thing in her head that she can't get past. It has a very, very depressing ending. I think I like it so much because it's one of those books that's depressing throughout, but it doesn't have a happily ever after ending. It has a really sad ending. Edith Wharton is a lot like Jane Austen, where she like writes like these satires of the century that she lives in and how women are treated in that century. And this is a great example of it. I've read one other Edith Wharton book that wasn't quite a 5-star, and then there's at least one other full-length novel and some short stories that I would like to read going forward. But so far, this is my favorite. I want to reread this a couple of times, and this might replace Pride and Prejudice as like my favorite classic of all time. Coming in at number 6 is a surprise to me, because this is a book that wasn't really on my radar, but it was a book that I ended up reading for one of the multiple award show reading challenges that I read for the year. And that is The Light Brigade by Cameron Hurley. Now, this book, the description of it makes it sound like a Groundhog Day type situation, which I hate. That is my least favorite trope ever. But it's not like where she's repeating the same day over and over again. It's more like she is not living her life in a linear time frame. She hops from different times in her life due to a malfunction of government equipment, I guess. So basically what this book is about is the world, Earth, and some outlying planets are run by corporations now. So government is businesses. It's not a separate entity. It's the major corporations run the government, and you live in a government compound. Soldiers travel by light, where their atoms are torn apart and they're sent different distances through light, and then their atoms rearrange themselves. Dietz, I believe is the main character's name, is a soldier. You're reading it from their perspective, and the light travel like has a weird effect on them. Dietz leaves and their atoms pull apart at their first destination, and then when they come back together, they are like 20 years in the future at a completely different thing than they're supposed to be sent to. And that's kind of like how the story is told, is these like seemingly unrelated different light jumps that Dietz has gone through that just are all over out of time. It's it's really interesting. The thing that I really liked about the book is the reason I keep calling Dites there is because the book does something really arbitrary and interesting with gender. The main character is sexless through the entire book. Like, you have no idea what gender Dites is, but as you're reading it, you don't realize that you don't know their gender. Where you get to the end and you're like, wait, I don't know this person's gender. And it was really cool because it was like something I didn't notice. Everyone in this, like, you can't, it's really interesting as well because they talk about sexual relationships and all of that, but like everyone in this in universe is bi and swap partners. So Dites is having sexual relationships with both male and female partners. Even talking about like their genitals. There's never enough detail to know whether you were talking about a male or female, but it's written in such a way that you don't notice it. And it was so, like, I love that part. It was so fantastic. I highly recommend if you like space-based sci-fi or military-based sci-fi. It was so cool. Very, very, very much worth the award nominations that it received in 2020. And now the top 5. Coming in at number 5 is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Now, this is a school-based fantasy where all kids with magical power are sent to these schools where they're taught to use their magic. I think it's a 3-year program. There are no teachers and they're kind of locked into the school, and everything at the school wants to kill them. Now, like, why would you send your child to a magical school where everything wants to kill you? It's answered in the book. It doesn't make sense when you're explaining it, but there is a justification for it that is explained in the book. This one is another one where I really, really just liked the character. The story was good, but the main character, her magic is inherently evil, and her magic wants her to destroy things. Everybody kind of has like a magical affinity, and hers is towards being evil, but she does not want to be evil. So she has a hard time doing like basic everyday housekeeping spells or even getting a hold of them. But she can get like these powerful world destroying spells that are worth a shit ton of money simply because that's what the school thinks she needs to learn because of how her magic affinity goes towards. So this is a book of her trying to make friends because you need friends in this school to survive, but being like an inherently unlikable person because of her magic affinity, because people can tell that like her magic leads towards like the evil side. But you can do evil magic by like draining the lives of other people. It's called like malfeasance, I think. And most people do like a little bit, maybe like kill a mouse or something like that, because it's an easy way to cheat. Because in order to like gain magical power, you have to do something to like earn it. So you can like knit something, and as you're knitting, because you're doing the work for it, you're gaining your magical power. Or you could do like push-ups or whatever. But she refuses to harm any creature in order to gain access to her power. And that is nearly unheard of, and no one, like, everybody makes like first assumptions about her and thinks that no way, like, she's evil, she's obviously evil, stay away from her because she's evil. But maybe she's not as evil as they think she is. And she's snarky. This is one of those where I love the character, and that's why this was high up on the list, is because of the character in it. There has been some controversy about some microaggressions and stuff in this book. There is one instance that actually stood out, which was an instance talking about dreadlocks that was not handled well. All of the other instances I feel are a lot of a stretch. Like, I am obviously not a person of color. I cannot speak for anybody, but a lot of them seem like not really microaggressions. Somebody's just taking things out of context to be angry at the book. So that one is up to you. If you want to, like, not read the book because somebody says there's a lot of microaggressions, I'm not the person to ask about microaggressions. There are plenty of BIPOC people on YouTube who have talked about this book who would be a better reference for that kind of information. But like I said, it didn't bother me. I've got a hair in my eye and it's bothering me. Okay. Anyway, number 5. I like this a lot. Book 2 comes out this year, 2021. I'm excited. Yay. Next up at number 4 needs an introduction because I discovered something about my reading taste that I didn't realize until I was putting this list together. And that's I really like fantasy romance. Hi, I'm Ari, and I'm addicted to fantasy romance. You're gonna see a lot of fantasy romance left on this list. And I'm surprised because I really didn't think I liked romance, but apparently I just hate contemporary romance and I love fantasy romance. So at number 4 is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. Again, this story I like because of the main character. Her name is Bryce, and she does not give one shit what you think about her or the rumors you spread about her. You think she's a ditzy, rich bitch who sleeps around a lot? That's fine, you're just underestimating her. She also has a lot of sex with people unapologetically. Like, in her world, it's very similar to our world where women are held to a higher virginal standard than men, but she's like, I don't care. I want to have a lot of sex. I'm going to have sex. If you judge me for that, that makes you an asshole, and it doesn't affect my life in any way. And I loved her for that aspect of her personality. The book itself, like the story is good. I just liked it for like that, like her personality more than anything else. In this story, Bryce is stuck with a angel named, shit, I forgot his name. I'm really bad with names and I read this earlier in the year. Hunt. She is stuck with an angel bodyguard named Hunt because she is trying to find some artifact that has to do with like the death of somebody close to her, and it's a murder mystery and like a, like, you know, whodunit find the artifact detective story, but it's also fantasy romance. I enjoyed it very much. I think the Crescent City Book 2 is supposed to come out in 2021, maybe at the end of the year, maybe not till 2022, but character driven, if you like fantasy romance, very good. It's thick, but it was a fairly easy read. Next up at number 3, at absolutely no surprise to anybody in the universe, is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. Of course Brandon Sanderson's gonna be on this list. I love almost everything he writes. This is the 4th book in his Stormlight archive. They're all thick boys. This is just over 1,200 pages. Every book in this series is 1,200 pages, or like 1,000 to 1,300 pages. This is very hard to tell you what this is about because it's the 4th book in the series of thick boy books. But the Stormlight Archive is an entirely made-up universe. Like, there is nothing that even remotely resembles Earth. Brandon Sanderson's world building is amazing. His plot progression is amazing. You don't ever feel, even in these really, really thick books, that the story is dragging on or anything like that. I read this whole book in 2 days. I read every single book in this series in 2 days, if that says, like, how easily, like, approachable these books are, no matter how thick they are. Great book. I really can't tell you any more about this. If you were interested in reading the Stormlight Archives and you have not read any of Brandon Sanderson's work to date, I recommend not necessarily starting with the Stormlight Archive. Pick up either Elantris or Warbreaker. Both of them are currently standalone books, and they are a great introduction to his Cosmere universe, where a lot of these big fantasy books that he writes takes place. But that is my recommendation for that. If you have not read Brandon Sanderson yet, read one or both of those books, see how you feel, then probably move into Mistborn, which are high fantasy novels but a lot smaller, a lot less thick. And then if you like Mistborn, move into the Stormlight Archive. Or you can ignore everything I say and just read the Stormlight Archive. You're just gonna miss Easter eggs. I mean, this is a standalone series that you can read on your own. There's just Easter eggs from the other other planets in the Cosmere universe that you miss out on by not reading them first. That's it. Next up at number 2 is another kind of surprise book that I didn't think that I would dislike, but I didn't think it would be my second best book of the year, and that is A Woman Is No Man by Itaf Rum. This is like general fiction, or maybe women's fic, and it is about 3 generations of women, Middle Eastern women. This is a study on abuse and your inability, and the inability of some women to escape abusive situations. This is a very heavy book. It is very sad. It covers these women where they are in situations where they're treated as lesser beings. They're not human, they're property of their husbands, and they live in communities where everybody around them believes the same thing, that women are just property of their husbands. They don't have any individual rights. If your husband wants to beat the shit out of you, then you are doing something incorrectly. It is not your husband's fault, it's your fault. And it's kind of like how they can't escape this because they don't know any other way. The women who live in the United States, where you're just like, go to a women's shelter, go talk to your neighbor, like, they don't have that luxury. They're Muslim, so they're basically told that white people hate them, or anybody who is not part of their Muslim community hates them. So if they try to leave their Muslim community, then they're just going to be attacked or approached with generalized hatred because of their religion. Because this happened, or like two of the time frames of this book happen after 2001, and it's just a very interesting, like, different levels of strength, and can you escape things that you didn't think were escapable. It's just a very moving story. It's a very good look at, like, the Muslim community from somebody outside, where it's like there's nothing wrong with the religion itself, it's just the culture and the attitudes. I thought it was great. Obviously, since it's number 2 on my list, I recommend this to anybody who can handle, like, heavier content and just, like, general fiction. It's a very good book. I definitely want to reread it a bajillion times, and moving on. Alright, before I get to my number 1 book, I want to do 3 honorable mentions, where these books were 5-star books for me. They just didn't make my top 10 of the 5-star books. I'm not going to say anything about it, I'm just going to, hold them up. And that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, Chain of Gold, book 1 of the Lost Hours series by Cassandra Clare, and From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is also book 1 of the series, and the series is the same as the title of the book. And all 3 of those were fantasy romance. Varying degrees of fantasy romance. From Blood and Ash is going to be the smuttiest, The Invisible Life Addie LaRue was more of like a character study that had romantic elements, and the Cassandra Clare novel was like more teenage based, but a lot of, you know, teen romances. And that brings us to my favorite book of 2020. Can you guess what this is? Leave me a comment down below if you guessed this before I held this up, because I've mentioned that it's probably going to be my favorite book most of the year because I read this fairly early in the year, and that is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. The book is described so perfectly by the little blurb right here, and that is lesbian necromancers explore a haunted Gothic palace in space. Lesbian necromancers explore a haunted Gothic palace in space. What more do you need to know about this book? This is another book that is entirely character driven. If you do not like Gideon's character and her, like, I want to look at titties and swing a broadsword attitude, you're not gonna like this book at all. This book has like not a whole lot of depth going for it outside of Gideon's personality. Or I guess it's got depth, it's just overwhelmed by Gideon's personality. So if you don't like her personality, you're not gonna like this book, like, at all. Like, straight up, like, read 20 or so pages into this. I'm sure you could get like a little snippet online. If you're like, I hate this bitch's personality, stay away from the book. If you're like, I like her, she's funny, you'll love the book. Anyway, it like I said, lesbian necromancers explore the haunted Gotham mansion in space. Gideon is an indentured servant on the 9th planet, which is bone necromancy. There are not a whole lot of living people on this planet, and when Harrowhawk, who is the princess, is summoned to go to the first house for a trial to become an immortal, she requires a bodyguard, and the young man who is her normal chosen bodyguard is a worthless piece of shit. So she bribes Gideon in exchange for her freedom to go with her to the first house, be her bodyguard while she's there. They call it a cavalier in the book. And once that event is over and Harrowhawk has earned her immortality, then Gideon will be free to go read as many titty magazines and swing her broadsword as much as she wants. Now they get to this haunted mansion, and there's like basically like a time limit quest where they have to solve all of these puzzles to earn their immortality. And there's also a murder mystery because people start dying. So that's that. This is fantastic. The second book in the series, Harrow the Ninth, follows Harrowhawk, and it's also personality driven, and I don't like Harrow's personality, so I didn't like that one near as much as I liked this one. But this is a fantastic book and can definitely be read as a standalone, though there's 3 books in this series. I will be reading the 3rd one when it comes out. I don't know if it's supposed to come out in 2021 or 2022, but whenever that shows up, I'm reading it too. And those are my top 10 books for 2020. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if there are any other books that sound like something I would like based on my top 10, let me know and I will try to check them out and add them to my TBR. I'll see you tomorrow for my worst books of 2020. Bye.